Hello, my sweet friends, and welcome to Kinda Shabby. My name is Becky, and I am so glad you have stopped by today. Now, my usual video format is to have 4 to 5 different DIY projects for you, but this one is going to be a little different. We are going to be talking about hand embroidery. I used to love to do hand embroidery when I was in junior high and high school, and I've recently been interested in taking that up again, and I thought, let's just do it together. So we've got several things that we're going to be discussing today. First, we'll talk basic supplies that you'll need to get started. We'll talk about using complete kits or using patterns. We'll talk about ways to create your own patterns. We'll also explore using printed fabrics as your pattern. I'll show you some simple stitches to get your project going, and we'll talk about fun ways to use those embroidered pieces besides just leaving them in the hoop. Well, we've got so much to talk about today, so let's go ahead and get this started. So before we get into our embroidery discussion, I thought that you may want to see some of the projects that I did when I was in high school. This one was from the American Family Crafts. Look how pretty. I love that. And I thought you guys would get a kick out of this one. It is an Avon kit. I probably started this in 1980, and I met Mr. Shabby in 1981 when we were still in high school, and that's where I left it. I think I'm going to work on finishing that project too in the future, but I thought that you guys would think that is just so cute, that it truly is vintage. I have literally had this since about 1980. Now, as far as your supplies go, you will need an embroidery hoop. You can pick these up at Walmart. They have various sizes. This is the size that I use most often in my projects. You are going to also need needles, so you want something that is going to be large enough to fit your floss through, but not so large that you're going to make excessive holes in your fabric. Which then also brings us to the types of fabric that you want to use. I prefer using a cotton muslin fabric, and I pick mine up at Hobby Lobby, but you can also find these at Walmart or any other place that sells fabric. You're also going to need some embroidery floss, and I like the DMC, and you can pick this up again at most fabric or craft stores. And also the colors that you use will depend on your particular project. This here is a complete kit. I picked this up at Walmart and it was $5. And inside your kit, it contains everything that you'll need to complete this project. It already has your little embroidery hoop in there. It has all of the floss that you will need to be able to complete your project. It has your needle. It has your fabric with your pattern already printed on there. And then it has your guide, which tells you which colors go where, and it also tells you what stitches you'll be needing for these particular areas too. So having a complete little kit like this for beginners is an absolutely fabulous way to get started. Now, this is a pattern collection that I also picked up from Walmart, and it is iron-on. You have what colors you will need to purchase, and your DMC floss all has numbers, and you can see there are different numbers here with the corresponding color, and on your floss it will have the color right here. It also tells you what stitches you will be using, and you can see that it has an assortment of very large patterns and also the smaller patterns here as well. So you will cut these out, place it on your fabric, and using these instructions you will be able to transfer this ink onto your fabric. If you want to use printed fabric, all you would need to do is simply select the flosses that would coordinate with the colors in your fabric. Like these pinks and whites here would be really cute. coral. I would also use cream in that one. Mint and the gold. So that would be really cute to just mount that into your hoop and begin stitching and embellish the already printed fabric with your embroidery flosses. A couple of quick words about making your own patterns, and then we'll get to stitching. I like to use what I have on hand, so I used some ink and I used this bee from my Iron Orchid Designs Queen Bee stamp set, and I stamped that on there, and then I just started filling that in with some cute little embroidery stitches. So that's one way to get a pattern. There are also many free embroidery printables available, so if you just do an internet search, you can find something that you like, and when you trace your designs, you can also trace them onto some fabric, or you can go ahead and trace it onto what you want your finished project to be. For instance, you could apply that to a tote bag, or you could put it on the center of a cute little doily. Anything like that is going to be appropriate. I'm going to show you two different ways to do your traceable patterns. The easiest way, of course, is if you're using a thinner fabric. If you lay that over your pattern, you can actually see the pattern through your fabric. Then all you would do is take a Sharpie or a pencil or even a fabric marking pen, and you would just trace out that design. And I'm not going to trace the whole pattern on camera, but you get the general idea. So I've got that little section there traced. Now if your fabric is too thick for you to be able to see through, then that's when some carbon paper comes in handy. I am going to be using my tote bag. You center up your design. You can tape it in place if you like. And again, I'm not going to trace out the whole design. And you can see right there, that easily transfers the design to our tote bag. To get started, we need to put our fabric in our hoop. And your hoop has this little screw here, so you're going to unscrew that, and that loosens this up. You'll place your fabric over that section and then put this one over the top. And I'm going to keep just stretching the fabric and screwing that screw down until my fabric feels nice and tight. And we'll follow the same process to put this in our little wooden hoop. Unscrew the screw, remove this, center it over your bottom ring, and then put your top ring over that. And again, I keep pulling, adjusting the screw until everything is nice and tight. And that's good. So our various patterns here have many stitches in common with each other, and they also have stitches that you will find in many beginning embroidery projects. And I'm going to be demonstrating here all of these different stitches, and once I show how to do them, we'll actually start doing them on our patterns here as well. For your running stitch, that's the first one here, come up from the bottom, and you will then come across. You're going to leave a little bit of space. You'll come up again and go down. And it's just simply an up and down stitch, leaving space between those stitches. Now we're going to jump over here to the back stitch. Again, you're going to come up and you're going to go down the fabric. You're going to leave a little bit of space just like you did in your running stitch. So I've come up here. But instead of going forward, you are going to do as it says, and you are going to come back to where you ended that last stitch right there. Just continue coming up in your fabric and coming back to your last stitch. You want your stitches to lie flat, but if you pull too tightly, you're going to pucker your fabric. Now we're going to hop over here to our stem stitch. I'll change my thread color, maybe that'll show up a little better. And again, we're going to come up from the back of our fabric, go down into your fabric, and this time, instead of pulling all the way down, I've left a little loop there, and my loop is on the right side of my line here. Now you'll bring your needle up between these two right here to complete your stitch. Bring your needle down. You've got a little loop to the right side of your line. You bring your needle up between the two to complete your stitch. I love the stem stitch, and it looks so pretty when you're actually doing stems on your patterns. It looks so pretty on a floral. We've got our loop again there. We're going to come up between the two to complete our stitch. It's just a nice little stitch that adds some body and some texture to your stitches instead of just these here, which are more of a flat appearance. And I'm doing these stitches quite slowly, but I like to slow it down when I'm trying to teach how to do something. Isn't that pretty? So that's our stem stitch. So I'm just going to come down at the end of this here to pull through to complete my stitch. Now for your straight stitch, you'll come up and then you will come down. And then you'll move to wherever your pattern tells you to put your straight stitch. And come up and then down. And that is your straight stitch. And now let's come over here to our chain stitch. We'll bring our needle up from the back. I'll take my needle and bring it down into the fabric very close to where this original stitch is here. So I've got a loop. Now I'm going to bring my needle up and catch that loop. And then when I pull, that is going to form my stitch there. We'll put our needle down very close to where this came up out of the fabric. Bring that down. And now we want to make sure we've left a loop. We'll bring our needle up again to make sure that it catches that loop. Isn't that nice? Bring your needle down next to where you brought it up. Make sure you have a loop, and then bring your needle up again to catch the loop. So then we've got our chain stitch, and if I'm going to complete that stitch, I'm going to bring it down, and then that's going to complete the stitch for me. So your lazy daisy is almost identical to your chain stitch. You will bring your needle up. Again, you will bring your needle down very close to where you brought it up. We're going to be leaving a loop. You will come up at the top of your daisy, making sure that you've caught your loop. Then you bring your needle down right over the top of your loop. Needle up from behind at the base of your daisy. Needle down very close to where you brought it up. Make sure you have your loop. Bring your needle up at the top of your daisy to catch your loop. And bring your needle down over the top across your loop. Needle up at the bottom of your daisy. Needle down close to where you brought it up. needle up at the top of your daisy to catch your loop, and needle down over the top of your loop. Isn't that cute? Now we'll move on to our satin stitch, and your satin stitch is one where you actually completely fill in that area with your threads. So I will bring it up from the top here, and I'm going to come down to the bottom. And then I'll make another stitch very close to that one and come back down beside it, filling in that design. And for my French knots, you're going to come up from the back of your fabric. Then you are going to take and wrap your needle. I like to wrap mine twice. You want to keep some tension on your thread, and then you're going to put it back down close to where you brought it up, but not back in the same spot, because then you'll just pull your knot out of your fabric. And then as you pull that through, look at that teeny tiny little knot. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, French knots are my favorite. Again, we'll come up from the back of our fabric, pull that through, wrap our needle twice, keep some tension on that thread, and bring it back down very near to where you pulled through, and pull through. Oh, I love that. Bring it up, wrap it twice, keep some tension on your thread, bring it back through. Isn't that so pretty? And now we're going to move on to our woven wheel. This is also sometimes called a spider web or a woven rose. It goes by so many names, sometimes a wagon wheel. So it has many different names, but it's always beautiful. And I'm going to do this stitch in two different colors to make it a little easier to see, but you would normally do it in just one color. So I'm going to do a straight stitch. Remember, this was the straight stitch over here, and I'm going to straight stitch all 5 of my little star here. So bring it up and come down. And we're just coming up at the top of the spoke and down into the center. So now we have all 5 of our little wagon wheel spokes straight stitched there. And we're going to start making our rose. Now, because I want a nice fluffy rose in the middle here, I have doubled over my thread and tied a knot. Now I'm going to bring my needle up very close to the center of my spoke here. And we are going to do just as it says, we're going to weave. So as I pull it up, I'm going to cross over this stitch and go under this one. I'm going to cross over this one and go under this one. And that's why I did it in 2 colors, just to make it a little easier to see. I'm going to go over this one and under this one. Because the spokes are uneven, the over and the under are going to alternate each other. So I'm going over that one, under this one, over this one, and under this one. And we're going to just do the over and under, just weaving all the way around. And you can see just going over and under, I've got a nice little woven rose here. And then I am going to take my needle and just kind of fluff up my threads here. And take my needle down to the back, or I can cut my threads and tie it off. One more quick word about your embroidery floss. Of course, when you purchase it, it comes packaged like this, but your floss is actually 6 individual strands of thread that is woven together that will form one of your flosses. So your instructions may tell you to use 2 or 3 strands, so you would just grab the number of strands required and then slowly pull those apart. So then once you pull those apart, you have whatever you're going to need according to your instructions. I have used all 6 strands to demonstrate here because you can't really wrap it up and put it back into your packaging. I like to take a strip of cardstock and just wrap those around there to keep them nice and neat and organized so I can use them again in another project. So now that we have these basic stitches down, we can go ahead and apply what we've learned to following those same stitches on our pattern. I like to start with my little stems and just work my way in. So I'm going to start around the outside edges with our little stems here. And I'm already going to be a rebel. My instructions tell me to use 2 strands of my embroidery floss and do a straight stitch. I don't like the way the straight stitch looks, but I'm going to do a stem stitch because that's what I like. And again, our stem stitch starts by coming up from the bottom. Make a stitch a little above that. Keep a little loop to the right and then come up between the 2. Your pattern is just a basic guide, but you can decide what you think is going to look better. So I'm just going to finish stem stitching all my little stems here, and then we'll move on to the next section. So I've done my little stem stitch there. That's so cute. And now our pattern tells us to use 6 strands of the dark green to do satin stitches to fill in these areas here. So we'll come back in and do satin stitches to fill in those little leaves. And I'll show you on the back, I do each section at a time. That way it's not a mess on the back. So I'm going to come up at the bottom of my pattern here. And then I'm going to come down. And because these areas are pretty small, it doesn't take much to fill that in. I'm going to come up again. Come down close beside it, and you just keep making the stitches close together, following your pattern until you have completely filled in that area with your embroidery floss. So I'm going to do the same thing and satin stitch all of these little leaves here, and then we'll come back and do a satin stitch on our larger leaves. And now to do these little leaves here, our pattern tells us that we're going to do satin stitch again, and we're going to use our sage green, and that is so pretty. Now also on our pattern, we're going to be coming back over with the dark brown to give definition to our leaves for this section right here. So we are going to be stitching over that, but we will be coming back to add the definition later. And again, we're going to start and come up from the bottom and coming down to our point. So as I continue to bring my needle through, filling in the area with my floss, I just think the combination of those colors is also really very pretty. So I love the pattern, but the fabric is really not what I would consider beginner friendly because it's just so thick and a little difficult to get that needle and thread through there. And now we have all of our little leaves satin stitched. How pretty did that come out? Now, according to our pattern, we need to come back in with our brown thread And we're going to come back over and make little lines to add some definition to our leaves here. That's what my back looks like. Come up from the back of our fabric here. Then we're going to come down about 3/4 of the way. So you can see it just gives a little bit of detail to those leaves so they don't look so plain. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the detailing of these leaves, and then we'll come back and get our woven roses done. So to do our little woven roses here, our guide tells us to do 6 strands doubled. So I have folded over my floss here and knotted it at the end. Now, according to the guide, we should be using this color right here. I don't like this color, so I'm going to be using a color that I have on hand that I think matches that so perfectly. And this is DMC number 316, and this color is actually called medium grape. We see that we've got lots of little roses here. I'm going to start in the middle and work my way out so I don't get all bunched up and then can't fit my flower in there. So I'm going to come up from the back and I'm going to straight stitch each one of the spokes in my little wagon wheel here. So I'm going to come up from each side and then bring it down in the middle on all 5 spokes of my little wagon wheel here. So I'm going to bring my needle up very close to one of the spokes here, and this is where we're going to begin weaving. So I'm going over this one and under this one. I'm going to go over this one and under this one. Over this one and under this one. And I'm just going to continue that same over, under, all the way around until my rose is nice and fluffy. So there is my pretty little rose. I'm just going to take my needle and fluff up the stitches just a little bit. I'm just going to take my needle and take it down to the back. Bring my needle through the thread and bring it back up to make a little knot. Back through to make a little knot and clip my threads. And that is going to be so cute when I get all of those stitched. How beautiful is that? We are almost finished. Isn't that just so pretty? What we're going to do now is finish off with French knots all between our flowers and our stems and fill all of that in with our French knots to give that a completed look. Bring my needle up from behind right here. Keep a little bit of tension on my floss. Wrap my needle 2 times, take it back down near to where I brought it up, and pull it through. Now that little tiny knot right there doesn't show up too well, but when we start adding all of those other French knots in there to build upon that, it's going to fill in that area and just be so beautiful. Bring my needle up near my other knot, wrap it twice, maintain my tension, and put my needle back down, and then pull it through. I'm just going to continue adding all of our little French knots, and we will be completed with this little beginning embroidery project. I just simply love how this turned out. How beautiful is that? Now for my French knots, I ended up doubling over and using the 2 because just using one strand by itself, those little knots were not showing up. Now you can use these same types of stitches here, draw your little wagon wheel and make flowers on some pre-existing floral fabric. And I'm putting this on my tote bag That is going to be so very cute. And I will link this pattern for you below. It's from Missy Kate Creations. She even has suggested colors for you to use, and she also tells you which stitches to place where. So our video is running very long, and to avoid it being even longer than what it is, I'm just going to quickly wrap up and say that this can be left on the hoop. You can trim your fabric and put some lace around the outside edges. This can be stitched onto a pillow. It can be put into a picture frame. There are just so many different ways to use your embroidered creations. I hope you can find this little cutie at Walmart and that you would enjoy doing something similar to that. And in the meantime, you can just get some scrap fabric and start practicing your stitches until you find a pattern that you really love. Well, I hope you found this week's video to be fun and informative. Let me know in the comments if you've ever done hand embroidery or if you plan on giving it a try. As always, I truly appreciate you spending a bit of your time here with me today. Please remember to subscribe for more kinda shabby but always chic crafty inspirations. And until next time, my sweet friends, be blessed.